How can you call this spending reckless when your companies are some of the biggest beneficiaries of public funds? Is it only responsible when the money flows into your pockets, but reckless when it's meant to feed families, fund schools, and fix our roads? Moment arrived with an unexpected ferocity when Representative Jasmine Crockett took a firm stand against Elon Musk during a fiery exchange centered on Donald Trump's proposed massive spending bill. It all started when Musk, seated with confidence and a sense of entitlement that comes with being one of the world's richest individuals, began criticizing Trump's massive spending proposal. While he didn't directly condemn Trump himself, his language dripped with disapproval toward the plan, referring to it as irresponsible, inflationary, and economically dangerous. He emphasized the risk of ballooning national debt and argued that such heavy government intervention would ultimately stifle innovation, crowd out private enterprise, and punish future generations with economic instability. For a moment, it appeared Musk's polished arguments and fiscal concern would dominate the discussion, as his charisma and stature often have the power to sway public opinion. But Jasmine Crockett was not going to let him define the conversation uncontested. Crockett's silence during Musk's speech was deceptive. She was listening intently, cataloging each contradiction and preparing a response that would reverberate beyond the walls of the room. As the moderator gestured toward her for comment, she stood with an air of calm authority. What followed was not simply a rebuttal, it was a recalibration of the entire debate. She started by acknowledging Musk's intelligence and entrepreneurial achievements, but that was merely a polite prelude to what would soon become a searing critique of Musk's selective outrage and convenient amnesia when it came to his own reliance on government spending. With sharp clarity, Crockett laid bare the vast ecosystem of taxpayer support that had allowed Musk's companies to thrive. She rattled off the billions of dollars Tesla had received through federal tax credits, state subsidies, and clean energy incentives. She noted how SpaceX had landed enormous government contracts from NASA and the Department of Defense. She even mentioned the infrastructure programs Musk's companies had leaned on to test, transport, and promote their innovations. Her voice rose not in anger, but in unapologetic truth as she declared, "You stand here condemning government spending while sitting on the throne that very spending built. That's not free market genius, Mr. Musk, that's public investment turned private fortune." The room was tense, as if everyone had momentarily forgotten how to breathe. Musk's usual smug composure wavered slightly. For the first time in recent memory, someone had challenged him in public and used facts not only to counter his point, but to expose the shaky moral foundation on which it rested. Crockett wasn't grandstanding, she was delivering a lesson in economic honesty. She questioned why Musk only seemed to oppose government spending when it didn't directly benefit him or his enterprises. "You weren't concerned about the deficit when you collected billions to develop rockets and cars," she said, "but now that we're trying to invest in childcare, healthcare, education, and infrastructure that benefits ordinary Americans, suddenly it's a crisis?" Crockett went on to defend the bill not as a blanket endorsement of Trump's policies, but as a necessary and targeted intervention designed to uplift communities that had long been neglected. She clarified that her support stemmed not from partisan loyalty but from principle. The spending wasn't about funneling wealth to corporations. It was about building lasting opportunities for the people who didn't have the luxury of stock options or government contracts. She reminded the audience that infrastructure wasn't just about roads and bridges, but about internet access in rural towns, clean water in neglected cities, reliable transit for working families, and medical services in places where none existed. Her words painted a vivid contrast between the America Musk represented and the America she fought for. Musk, with his interplanetary ambitions and tax-sheltered billions, had crafted a life so far removed from average citizens that his criticisms rang hollow. Crockett's America, meanwhile, was filled with families struggling to balance groceries and rent, students drowning in debt, elderly people rationing medication, and essential workers who hadn't taken a day off since the pandemic. She turned to Musk again and declared, "If we can spend billions to explore Mars, we damn well can spend billions to fix Earth." The audience erupted, not in frenzy, but in overwhelming respect. They had seen debates before, they had heard economic theories, but rarely had they seen someone so effectively challenge a billionaire in real time, armed only with integrity and truth. Crockett didn't attack Musk's success. She attacked the entitlement that allowed him to act as though he alone understood what was best for the nation. She challenged the deeply ingrained belief that the ultra-wealthy should set public policy while avoiding its consequences. As Musk sat in stiff silence, Crockett continued her deconstruction of his position. She brought up the paradox of libertarian billionaires who hated government intervention, yet rushed to take government money when it helped them. She exposed the intellectual dishonesty of decrying socialism while embracing subsidies, of pushing for deregulation while relying on publicly funded infrastructure. And then, perhaps her most devastating line of the entire exchange, "You can't cash checks from the government Monday through Friday and then preach austerity on Sunday." It was a masterclass in accountability. Musk, a man used to shaping headlines with a single tweet, suddenly found himself on the defensive. He attempted a short retort, something about innovation requiring investment. But Crockett cut through the noise with a simple question: then why shouldn't we invest in the people who keep this country running? Why should innovation stop at billionaires? The rhetorical blow landed with surgical precision. The crowd, once again, broke into applause, this time longer, louder, and tinged with a kind of cathartic release. Crockett wasn't done. She used the opportunity to expand the conversation to a broader indictment of how public policy is manipulated by those with wealth. She spoke of lobbying, tax loopholes, and the way corporate America had rigged the system to avoid paying its fair share while demanding more sacrifices from everyday Americans. "This isn't about red versus blue," she said. "This is about equity versus exploitation, and I will not sit quietly while billionaires use their platforms to shame spending that doesn't benefit them directly." By the time she concluded, Musk had retreated into silence. The once commanding presence now seemed diminished, not because he had been humiliated, but because he had been exposed. The power of Crockett's words didn't come from rehearsed soundbites or flashy graphics. They came from truth, from lived experience, from someone who understood that leadership isn't about dictating policy from a pedestal, but about listening, empathizing, and standing up for those who have no voice in elite rooms like the one they were in. What made the moment so significant wasn't just Crockett's delivery, it was her refusal to be cowed by wealth. She stared down one of the most powerful men on the planet and made it clear, money doesn't equal moral authority. And for many watching around the nation and across the globe, it was a turning point. Social media exploded, journalists rushed to capture the gravity of the moment, and ordinary Americans felt, even if just briefly, that someone was finally speaking for them in a place where they're usually forgotten. In the days that followed, the aftermath was seismic. Political analysts dissected Crockett's performance, praising her preparedness, her moral clarity, and her ability to articulate what so many people felt about inequality and elitism. Hashtags like #StandWithCrockett and #ElonExposed trended for days. Late-night hosts made jokes about Musk being Crocketted, but beneath the humor was a sense of deep appreciation for the congresswoman who dared to challenge a system that constantly rewarded the powerful and punished the vulnerable. Crockett's exchange with Musk continues to ripple through the political sphere. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle were forced to confront their own positions on public investment, and more importantly, the hypocrisy of condemning spending only when it helps the poor and not the rich. She reignited conversations about how public funds should be allocated, and who should hold influence in those decisions. And perhaps most critically, she reminded Americans that public service is supposed to be just that, service to the public, not the privileged few. As the clip of her fiery takedown continues to circulate, people across the country are replaying that moment and realizing just how rare it is to see someone so boldly disrupt the narrative. In a world where political theater often trumps policy substance, Crockett delivered both. She reminded the nation what true accountability looks like, and in doing so, she did more than shut Elon Musk down. She sparked a movement. She gave people hope. She brought the power of truth to a room that had long been dominated by power alone. If this moment inspired you as much as it inspired us, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell icon for more real talk, real truth, and real leadership. Jasmine Crockett showed us that courage isn't just a virtue, it's a necessity.